Right, hey, what's up everyone, it's Weston here. So today we've got the review of the Archos 50 Diamond smartphone. So a big thank you to Archos for sending this out to review. So taking a look at the phone, you can see I have the yellow version, but it does come in black as well, which I will link down in the description. So let's take a look around the phone. So starting off at the top, we've got your usual sensors and stuff like that, your earpiece, a 8 megapixel camera and a LED notification light. In the middle you've got your display. Now this is a 5-inch IPS display with a 1080p resolution. At the bottom you've got some off-screen capacitive keys and the Archos logo, and you can just see the colour yellow and how sort of vibrant and bright it is against the contrasting black. Around the back you've got your 16 megapixel camera and your LED flash along with some Archos branding. Also on the back you've got a rear firing speaker. On the top you've got your 3.5mm jack and a noise cancelling microphone. On the bottom you've got a pretty much standard micro USB and your primary microphone. On the left side of the phone you've got your power switch and a volume rocker. Not the way around that I'm usually used to, but it works very well nevertheless. And then on the right side it's pretty much plain apart from a little notch just to allow you to remove the back cover. Speaking of under the back cover, you do get a 2700 milliamp non-user removable battery, 2 inputs for SIM cards and a SD card slot for SD cards up to 128 gig in capacity. So the 50 Diamond weighs in at 142 grams. Its thickness of 8mm, so it's not the thinnest devices out there, but it does pack in a pretty big battery. In the hand though, it feels really nice. It doesn't feel too heavy or too light. The 5-inch display is perfectly sized, so you don't have to do too many hand gymnastics. The only issue is you do have to shuffle your hands a bit to use the bottom keys that are off screen. But other than that, it is really nice to use. So the 50 Diamond is made from a mainly plastic construction. I'm presuming the front screen is Gorilla Glass. I'm not sure which version, but it's probably one of the most common used types of glass on smartphones. So that just leads me to the conclusion that it is probably used on this phone. The overall phone, however, does feel very solid considering it is a plastic construction. Like I said already, it's got a pretty reassuring weight. There's no creaks, the buttons don't rattle or anything while you're moving it around, and it just generally feels solid. All the buttons feel nice as well. They don't feel too mushy and they've got a really nice feel to them when pressed. So all in all, build quality is pretty impressive. So under the hood we're packing a Snapdragon 615 octa-core processor. So this is the A53. So we've got 4 cores clocked at 1.5 GHz. And we've got 4 slower cores at 1 GHz. So it's got an Adreno 405 GPU, 2 GB of RAM and 16 GB built-in storage, which like I said is expandable up to 128 GB via SD. The phone also features, very surprisingly, NFC and 4G, but it's also got your usual connections like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and all your other stuff that comes packed in a smartphone as well. So overall it's a pretty impressively spec phone for something relatively inexpensive. So the 50 Diamond is running Android 4.4 and it is practically a stock-like experience. So that means you're getting really smooth performance, all the transitions and stuff look pretty much exactly the same, all the settings menus and quick menus and stuff like that look exactly the same, so Archos haven't skinned this at all. I really like that. I really love the stock Android look of the phone, and that's pretty much what it is. So if you've seen those types of videos before, you'll know what to expect. The only thing that is different is the off-screen keys. The left one acts as a settings shortcut, so in apps you can quickly fire up your settings without having to search for them. The middle button is your home button, and if you give that a double tap it will open up all your previously used apps. Then finally your right button acts as a return button essentially. Now the off-screen keys aren't the brightest, so in use outdoors they're not the greatest, and that's pretty much all I found during my testing. Also different is a couple of extra settings. One of those is the screen color. Now you don't usually get this on stock Android, but here you do actually get an option to change the settings of the screen, so you can have it in standard, vivid, although you can customize the colours as well. So what you can do there is change the hue, the saturation, the contrast, and you can really get the screen looking how you want it. Now that is a very welcome addition and something I think should be integrated into pretty much, into all of stock Android. The other thing I noticed that's different as well is the EQ on your built-in music player app. It just looks a little bit different, and it's got a little bit of an extended functionality in comparison to the stock version. The final thing that is a little bit different is the camera app as well. You seem to get much more options than you do on stock Android, and I'm thinking this is Archos adding some more features to get even more out of your photos. So you can see you have 3 different rows of options, and like I said, it's a much more comprehensive app than you get standard. This is the same for video as well. You do get more settings than you do with stock Android. One of those features that I really do like is the time-lapse feature, so you can actually do time lapses, something that's missing from stock Android. Finally, you can do panoramas as well, just in case you like to do them. All in all though, it is a very nice stock-like experience with a few tweaks that I welcome. So the 50 Diamond has a 1080p resolution screen like I've mentioned already. It also has a pixel density of 444 pixels per inch. It's packing OGS and GDI technology, which apparently makes visibility better outdoors. However, from the footage you can see that that isn't really the case. The screen, although bright, is very glary, and that makes it difficult to see in bright light. So although it's packing this technology, I don't really see the benefit, and it hasn't really performed as great as some of the other phones I've used in the past. The screen quality is still pretty good though, but like I said already, it's just not the greatest viewing experiences outside. Even on max brightness, I noticed that it wasn't really that easy to read in very, very bright direct sunlight. If you go into a more shady area though, it's pretty good. Indoors on the phone, it's pretty impressive. So all this light here is natural light. So you can see the screen at the minute is on the lowest brightness setting, but if we crank that up to max brightness, you can just see exactly how bright the screen gets. So the screen does go fairly bright. I'm not sure what the actual level of brightness is because I don't have anything to test that, but you can just see how vivid and bright the screen is. All the colours and stuff are brilliant, and that is thanks to the JDI screen, which gives a really nice colour accuracy and colour reproduction. So you can see 1080p gaming looks really great. So that's thanks to the Snapdragon processor, the Adreno GPU, the 2GB of RAM, and the 1080p display. Now this is Asphalt 8, and this is a pretty intense game, and you can see the Archos is handling it unlike my driving. But you can see it's playing really smooth and there's no sort of issues whatsoever. So next up we have Gods Amongst Us, another pretty intensive game that also looks really awesome as well, unlike I mentioned my gameplay. But all in all though, the performance of this phone is great and you're not going to notice any issues whatsoever. So now we'll move on to everyday use, and apps like Twitter and stuff work reasonably well. I have noticed though that there has been a bit of stuttering when loading in Twitter. Now that could either be my internet or maybe the Twitter app itself, because I can't really see it being the phone with how much power it has. Same with Google Plus again, it's a little bit jittery. I mean, I'm thinking that's probably more my internet loading than it is the actual phone. But the experience still is pretty good overall. Then we move on to one of my favourite apps, Instagram, and again that works really well on this phone. You can see it's scrolling really smooth and it looks really nice as well. Web browsing on the 5-inch display is brilliant. It's probably one of the nicest experiences I've had this side of the Nexus 5. But the screen looks great, all the colours and stuff on websites look amazing. And I'm really impressed with the display on this phone, and all that considering it's very low cost. So again, you can see how easy text is to read, and even if you zoom in and blow it up quite a lot, you can still see you can't hardly see any rough edges around the text whatsoever, and that's just the 440p ppi and the 1080p display all coming into its own there. Video playback is pretty impressive. For some reason mine won't work in 1080p. I'm presuming that's due to my slow internet and not the phone. But you can see the footage looks really great. So if you've got better internet than I have, you'll probably be able to get that 1080p benefit, whereas I wasn't able to on this one. But overall, the screen is very, very impressive, as is all the viewing experience and multimedia experience you're ever going to have. So looking at the screen closer, you can see the 444 pixels per inch really coming into their own. Even looking at the screen really closely, you can't see any pixels or anything like that, and the screen is pretty brilliant. So how does all this affect battery life? Well, as you can see on screen now, we've got a couple of screens from the phone. So you can see the first one is 2 days battery life, and that gave me a screen on time of just over 5 hours. The next day I used the phone a little bit more and still managed to get over 4 hours, and that was pretty typical. Now bear in mind, I'm not the heaviest of users, so your mileage may vary. So now we get onto the camera, and like I've said already, it is a 16 megapixel rear shooter with an LED flash. Now let's take a look at some sample photos. So you can see, focusing on this flower, the image looks really nice. The colours again are really nice, and it's focused really well on that specific point. Looking at this image of the statue, and you can see all the colours are really nice, all the shadows look really great. It's not too over contrasty, it's not too over saturated or overexposed or underexposed. It can, however, get it wrong sometimes, and here it has oversaturated and give it too much contrast. You can obviously tweak the settings, but that's just with auto mode enabled. Sometimes it does get it pretty spot on though, and all the colours and stuff on this image look pretty great and quite accurate to what it looks like in real life. Like I said, it can get things very wrong though, and you can see this shot is very overexposed. Now we get onto some footage, and you can see walking around, it's not the best footage whatsoever. You can see it's really unstable, taking really long to focus when the camera's moving around, and to be honest, it's better stationary than it is on the go. So all in all, the camera is a little bit hit and miss, to be honest. It is capable of shooting some pretty decent photos if you're willing to tweak the settings. All in all though, I'm not too overly impressed, as I look for a really strong camera when I'm buying a phone. So if you're really into your photography, then this might not be the phone for you. The call quality from the Archos is pretty decent. It's very clear, it's not the loudest, but you can actually hear what's being said as long as you're in a quiet environment. So if you're in a noisy place, then it's not the best I've found. But other than that, it is pretty good. This can be said from the 3.5mm jack as well. The audio quality is very good, but it's on the quiet side. Especially with headphones or earphones, I did notice that compared to my Moto G, the output from the 3.5mm jack is very quiet. Although, like I said, very good quality, it's not the loudest. So if you like your music really loud, then you may have to get a third-party app or an amplifier. The audio quality from the rear speaker is pretty decent. It's very loud, it's very clear. It doesn't have the greatest amount of depth, but that's not surprising from a phone like this and one without front-firing speakers. But it's adequate for things like watching back YouTube, listening to a little bit of music, and just general video playback. So now I'm just going to give you a quick demo to let you hear what it sounds like. So to wrap this review up, the 50 Diamond from Archos is a brilliant phone. I love the simple, clean design. The build quality is really impressive. I love the overall performance of the device. That includes web browsing, media consumption, game playback, and all that good stuff is brilliant. That's thanks to the 1080p screen and the good specs it has as well. The only thing that let me down a little bit is the slightly disappointing camera, and the audio playback through the headphone jack was just a little bit too quiet for my liking. But other than that, this phone is brilliant, and all for a very low cost as well. So if you're interested in this phone, I will link where you can get it from down in the description. Right guys, so that is it for this review. Like I said, I've really enjoyed using this phone. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Any likes, shares, comments, subscribes would be greatly appreciated. If you've got any questions, drop me a comment down below. That is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.